Okay, hey, welcome back everybody to the Level Up podcast. And I am super excited. Today we have got a returning guest, Mr. Josh Barker out of the West Coast, Redding, California. Josh, welcome back to the Level Up podcast.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me here today and looking forward to having a conversation with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you back. And I mean, you've got a ton of stuff to share with everybody. And one of the things we've talked to, our whole motto is from agent to entrepreneur. So one of the things that comes up a lot is the step from agent to entrepreneur always includes, you've got to figure out what your why is. We've taught before, and I know you've got a big why. Kind of for those that may not know you, just bring us up to speed on, your history in the real estate industry, and maybe talk a little bit about how that transitioned into, what you've accomplished over the last 20 years in the business.
Sure. Well, it was, getting into the business, you didn't know what you didn't know. And within those first couple of years, I'd been exposed to some really high producing agents. In fact, Greg being one of those, Greg Harrelson that's there. And, being around those kind of people, you get exposed to, hey, wait a minute, you don't have to be doing 2 or 3 deals a month. You could be doing 20 or 30 deals a month if you just learn to do the right things the right way. And so, those first couple of years was learning that and developing the skills. And all of a sudden, then this goal setting thing comes in where you're like, wait a minute, if I actually were to get to the level of some of these other agents, what could that possibly mean for my family? And so, I took a lot of time early on setting up, numbers in terms of financial cash flow that I wanted to achieve so that I could, be financially free at some point. I had set that goal for 20 years in the business. And I even went as far as to determine, how many commercial buildings, how many multifamily buildings, how many houses, what would that actually need to be in order to have that passive cash flow? And then I went back a little further and said, okay, well, how many homes would I need to sell in order to earn the income that's necessary to buy those investments? And so, when you go through that, it sounds kind of analytical, but when you go through that exercise, it begins to bring some clarity and some meaning to doing things on the days that you don't want to do them.
Yeah.
And I think that's incredibly important that, even though you may not want to be there doing that particular call that day, the why is just so big that it overcomes and literally overwhelms that emotion you might have had initially, and you get excited all over again. And so I was really fortunate to be doing something that I loved, to do something that I knew was getting me to my financial goals that I had set for our family. Mm-hmm. And so, after 20 years in the business and getting to that financial freedom, it was like, okay, it's time to, basically say we've climbed this mountain as an agent, a highly leveraged agent. Now let's take some time and regroup, and let's look at the next mountain we might want to climb. And that's where we're at today, where we're developing a company versus, just being an agent in production.
Love that. So the couple of things that I heard you say in there, one, which I think is so important, it happened to me when I started. And I to this day, I believe that was a huge factor in what I was able to do. It's proximity. It's who you're around. Yep. From not only the beginning. So if you show up and the people that you're hanging around, they're doing 15, 20 deals a year, that's your normal. And that's right. What you're going to play to. You show up and the people around you are doing 100, 150 deals a year. Then all of a sudden you've got a new normal. Yes. And it's no different once this business, you're going to make plenty of money well before you accomplish your why. So there's a gap there between, like, you can be making a lot of money, have a lot of residual income, and you will stop if you don't have something that's bigger.
You're right. You do. You have to have something bigger and something that's going to wake you up and get you excited. And I think Jim Rohn said it best. It's like, hey, why do you get up so early? It's like, well, if you were going where I'm going, you get up early too.
Yeah.
And you've got to be turned on and, and play that game with yourself where you're going through that exercise of really finding a way to be turned on every day and be excited about the opportunity to serve people. And, again, I think that's probably, if I were to look back and go, how did I pull that off for 20 years at that level? It's like, well, I was really excited for 20 years because of that, of that why.
Yeah. Well, you're a really, from the time that I spent with you, you're a pretty humble dude. And I know that, deals and stuff like that aren't your why. But I think for perspective, it's good that the audience kind of knows. So you started out as an agent, got a license. Where did you start? And then where did you get to at the point that you said, okay, maybe I need to do something different because I hit that mark that I've been looking for 20 years.
I think thank you. That's a good question. I think the first 5 years I was doing 100, 150, 180 deals a year, right in that range. That was the progression. Like it was pretty fast, faster than I know a lot of agents would experience. A lot of it was just because I was around the right people that were training me the right way. I was heavily focused on the listing side of the business, which is a leveraged side of the business. I didn't work with many buyers after that first year. But I did reach that ceiling of about 150, 180 transactions where I personally couldn't get above that. And that's when I started bringing in agents to join up my team, quote unquote, because I needed to have some leverage to show homes and provide services to our clients that would take away from me going out and listing more homes. And so we went through that transformation. But towards the end of that 20 years, I would be going on personally about 450 listing appointments a year. I'd be listing roughly 350 a year personally, sell about 280 of those personally. And then all the buyer transactions, which was another 500 or 600 deals, were all done by our sales team that worked with me. I had a total of 10 agents that worked alongside of me. That's what they did. They took care of a lot of the buyer side of the business. And so it was, I was highly leveraged. I didn't have a lot of time available to me. And I did that until, I had 3 or 4 years where I was hitting over 300 homes listed a year. And I realized that, I could keep doing this. But we had reached our financial goals. And I thought, like I said earlier in this video, I think it's time to, say, okay, this is a great mountain to summit. Let's take some time and be thoughtful about the next mountain we want to climb. But we went through all of those transformations. My wife and I in this business, like most people do. If you've been in for 20 years, you've gone through all of it,
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. I mean, I think I hit the higher numbers of listings. I think that's probably the one that usually shocks people. But the reason why it happened was because I was around a group of people that were saying, is it possible? We were challenging each other all the time. Like, can it be done? And I didn't do it with subdivisions. I mean, that was just mom and pops at their kitchen table. It was a lot of work. And, but once you started doing it, you realize that, well, it is possible. The only reason nobody thought it was is because nobody had tried it.
Yeah.
And I gave a lot of credit to a guy named Mike Darda. He's down in Florida. He's still in real estate. Great guy. But one day Mike Darda had said, my goal is to list 40 homes a month. But what I thought he said was, I list 40 homes a month. And so when he said it,
I can do that.
I was like, I have to do that too. And so, and only later did I find out that he didn't say I'm doing that. He said I wanted to do that. But it's so cool how that worked out because he made it possible for me.
Yeah.
By just saying that.
Yeah.
And it was cool.
You've mentioned the term, leveraged, and some people may not know what that means. And it's basically he's making time work for him. He's making, he's getting the most out of every minute by having a team and having systems in place and being very skilled. He wasn't going on 1.5 hour listing appointments, guys. No. But you're going on 400 appointments, listing 300 plus homes. I don't care how leveraged you are hustling. That is a lot of work. And so that's huge. So somewhere in there in the sales part of it, you'd started seeing some opportunity and said, okay, maybe and for the record too, I mentioned California, you're not in LA, right? Like no. You're not in like the highly populated LA County. Where are you?
I live in Shasta County, and Shasta County has a population of about 145,000 people. We're in such a conservative little town. A lot of people wear cowboy boots around here. And they call them shoes. So my poor daughter, she went away to college down in the Napa area, and she came home visiting. And she says, she says, Dad, people here, they call me a hick or a country girl. Why do they say that? And I said, well, honey, look at what's on your feet right now. She goes, what, shoes? I'm like, those are called boots. So that's great. Yeah, it's pretty funny.
So you're selling 300 listings. You've got a team behind it, another 500 plus buyers. That's 800 deals a year. Is that 50% market share? I mean, what kind of market share is that with in that type of?
There was almost 8,000 sides in our market.
Okay.
4,000 or so homes sold a year. So we were prevalent and participated in a lot of transactions. Yeah. But at our peak, we were just at 800 transactions a year as a team. And I was closing about 280 of it personally, and the balance was being done by our sales team.
Okay.
And thank God for that. It's nice to
Yeah.
have a good team doing that. But it was, I was hitting the ceiling in our market. I already knew. I was like, I don't have any more time available to me. We're starting to see this law of diminishing return with what I can personally do. And I could have leveraged out with listing agents much sooner, but I chose not to at that time. That's why when we came back, we just launched our company about 90 days ago. And I said, we're going to rebuild, but I'm not going to be that producer in this company anymore. Now I'll move that into that leadership role. We're going to coach, train, and mentor our agents. We're going to have processes and systems to coach and train them on. And we're going to take what we've learned over 20 years and we're going to pour it into our sales team so that they can provide that great value and service to our clients and get the results that their clients want, that the agent wants, and ultimately what the company wants.
Awesome. So where did the ability, your financial freedom that you were going for, was that going to come from doing transactions? Is that where it came from, or what kind of launched you to that quicker? Because it wasn't
early on, what I did was I took the time to kind of figure out, what exactly do I want for passive cash flow? And I was trying to project, way down the road, 15 years down the road, what do I want this to be? And so I came up with a number. I figured out how many assets I'd have to control to accomplish that number. I figured out how many transactions I'd have to do to buy those properties. But what people may miss, and I'm way more conservative than most, so some people may not even like this comment, but what I did is that once I secured enough assets that I knew once they were paid off would ultimately provide me with this passive cash flow that I was looking for, I stopped acquiring at that point. And that's where I think I would turn a lot of people off, but that's what I did. And then I started focusing on paying off certain things. And then what happened is that all that passive cash flow that was coming in, it was just simply spilling into the next loan on the other property, paying those balances down faster. And so it just went really fast. That last 3 or 4 years, man, I was paying stuff off left and right. And I personally wasn't really paying a lot of it off. It was just the passive cash flow that was coming in that was used to pay that off. And for the younger people on this call or this video, they're gonna be like, that's crazy. You need to keep buying. And it's like, I didn't know rates were gonna stay at 2.7 this long. I mean, we were expecting the market to make a shift several years ago. So, I was conservative and I don't regret the decision. That's just who I am. But ultimately, it's proven to be really well because we have a passive cash flow. I don't have to work anymore. I enjoy building a company, and I like that process. That turns me on, and it's the next mountain we want to climb.
Got it. So just a little bit deeper dive into your plan. One thing that keeps coming out is your numbers. Your numbers on your listings. Your team obviously knows their numbers because they're producing at a high level. And you figured out, all right, I've got X amount going out every month in expenses, lifestyle, bills, groceries, all that stuff. And I need to acquire properties where the positive cash flow, I can guess you were a positive cash flow guy. You weren't buying stuff based on maybe it'll go up. Your positive cash flow, and each positive cash flow cuts a little bit of a dent into what I'm spending every year. And you want to get to the point where everything you were spending was covered by your passive income.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So you go ahead.
I was going to say, so those numbers were, I probably lived off of about 20% of the income I earned each year. So, the company at the time, let's say I was netting taxable income of about 2 million. And my family was living off of roughly 200,000. But I live in California, so I didn't have a 1.8 to spend after that. I only had about 800 to spend after that, because they take half right off the top for the privilege to live in the Golden State, right? So, so I've got 800 grand, and that 800 grand is going to acquire properties early on, and then pay off certain things as well. And so, I lived really low beneath our means in comparison to what I could have done. But that wasn't our goal. Our goal was not to do that. Our goal was to get to a point where we could be financially free as young as possible. And not so that we could retire, but more so that we could make a decision on what we wanted to do instead of what we needed to do.
Yeah, man, I'm so glad that you said that. I was going to ask, but you actually said exactly what I was thinking. There will come a time where, and the best thing to do is spend the first 5 or 7 years in the business and don't change your lifestyle at all. But, you start doing things, you start making a little bit of money, you want to buy the new house, the car, the boat, I get it. But you have to pick a spot where you're going to stop increasing your lifestyle to meet your income, because otherwise you will work just as hard forever and have nothing to show for it. And then when
Right.
something changes and your income goes backwards, you're really, really stuck. So kept the lifestyle at a normal pace, banking cash, buying properties, got to the point where you're like, okay, we're financially free. Then because there's a gap between that and where you're sitting here today. What did you do? What was the thing that you needed to do at that point to say, all right, I'm going to go hang out and do something else for a while?
Well, it's funny. I was at a dinner with you and Greg. This has been 6-7 years ago. And Greg says to me, he goes, you know, Josh, you're going to go through a mental breakdown when you step out of production. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, I don't know, but something's bad's going to happen. Something big's going to happen when you step out of production. I'll never forget he said that. And I was like, okay. When we reached that passive cash flow number, my wife and I had this dream of always taking our kids and going sailing. And so we already owned our sailboat in Florida, even though we live in California. And we've been going back and forth visiting our sailboat as much as we could. And when COVID hit and we were already financially free, and my daughter, who was in college, daughter was in high school, and my son at home, he was only 5 at the time. And I said, you know, honey, we will have no better time than right now to take those girls, since they're on homeschool anyway, because of, you know, COVID locking down the colleges and high school. Let's just, if they want to go, let's go. And they were between boyfriends at the time. And it was like so perfect timing. Yeah. So we took off. We went and, you know, I made the bad news announcement to our company and let them know it. And we did a conversion where that company transformed into a different company. And so we didn't just like walk out, but they didn't have to move their office. They just a new sign, a new leadership team, and they stayed where they were at. And we went and jumped on our sailboat and took off sailing towards the Bahamas and the Caribbean. And then
That's incredible.
We thought we'd gone for 3 or 4 years, but as fate would have it, we ended up having another baby. So that causes the boat to turn around and come back to the States. And so now we have a 6-month-old, a 5-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 22-year-old. So I've got kids on both ends of the spectrum.
That's incredible.
Same wife. I get that question a lot. Do you get remarried? I'm like, no, we're just both pretty nuts. So.
Wasn't a lot to choose from out there in the water.
What's that?
Wasn't a lot to choose from out there in the water.
No, not a lot to choose from, right? Yeah, she had better options here in the States for sure. So
that's funny.
So we were, you know, when we came back, it was a decision of, you know, what's the mountain. We were thinking about it while we were out there, but we thought we'd be gone longer. And I had a few opportunities, and I think I told you before this video started. At the end of the day, I really do still love the process of building companies, and I didn't want to go work, you know, as a CEO for another company or something when I felt like this was, you know, I still had another mountain I could climb in the real estate business. I think with Zillow and Realtor.com and some of the other interesting challenges that the industry is going to have in the next 5 years, I very much want to have my say along with you guys and how that happens and how that transforms and be competitive and, you know, take on the bigs, right? It's going to be fun. I think it's going to be so much fun to compete that way. And it's interesting, the solutions that we're going to have to come up with as brokers, you know, how we facilitate processes for our clients and how we, you know, build these teams now, because we really have to build them for a disruption we all know is coming. And so what more fun could you possibly have than to know you're in an industry that's about to get disrupted?
Yeah, we're not the travel agents that just all of a sudden turn around and you know, Travelocity and everything was behind them. Like that concept wasn't even out there. Nobody knew that was happening until it happened. We're not the blockbusters that just get slapped upside the head. We know this is coming. We've got every opportunity to prepare, and some are and some aren't.
I totally agree. You know, I was talking to our sales team about this a couple of days ago, and I said, you know, the interesting thing is that out there in realtor world, and that would be the people outside of our companies, you know, there's 1,000 agents doing 1,000 things, 1,000 different ways. There's no strategy. There's no cohesive process. There's no, you know, vision for the future, and they're going to get slaughtered. I mean, they're going to get eaten up so fast by this market shift. And by the industry that's going to get disrupted, where I think teams that are, you know, structured properly, value driven for the consumer, you know, very thoughtful about how to bring agents in and how to train and equip them to be successful, and being realistic about what the fee structure might be in the future, and how we're going to have to be competitive against whatever the bigs decide to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be a lot of interesting challenges, but I think working as a company, as in a team, at least with that, you have a chance to have an impact in your market. Whereas an individual agent, there's no way a small agent's going to be able to have that kind of meaningful impact.
Yeah.
And I think brokers, if they recognize that's the value they can bring, is to be, be a leader, have a vision, a mission, and a plan, have a process and a system, bring people together, have a cohesive strategy that everybody's working with, and make sure it works, tweak it all the time, make it better, and I think that, those are the companies that are going to be viable long-term.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good segue into, now that you are not in production, and you're a leader, you've got to have the vision, you got to have the mission, you got to have the plan. How has your role changed since you're out of production now? In still though, I mean, I know you're not in this to do 50 deals for your company.
No.
So tell us what's changed with how you're running your team or your company.
Well, I think I have more time now to be looking at, what I call the three buckets or three pillars, which is lead generation, lead conversion, and the administrative support side, right? Those are the three things that every real estate company really has to evaluate. And looking at the lead side, it's, being really strategic about how we're going to do our marketing and our promotion. We have to generate opportunities at a lower cost than our competitors. The volume needs to be high enough that we can, provide, based on a conversion rate, will provide the results the company wants to provide. You have the conversion piece, which is how many agents are you going to need to fulfill that vision? What kind of coaching and training are you going to need in place to get the conversion rate at the number which keeps the company profitable? What systems and processes to make life easier for that conversion to stay sustainable. And then the administrative side, which we take a lot of ownership on. We have full-time listing management, closing management, marketing, and being that we take ownership of that. Are we staffed properly? Are they trained properly? Do we have the right tools and systems in place so they can be successful? Making sure that, it's scalable, because, I don't plan to stay just in Reading. I'm planning on going to Sacramento next. And, making sure our systems and processes here are going to be the same ones that we can execute on down in, it's a 2.5 hour away market. So got to have some processes in mind. And as a CEO, you've got to be thinking like that. If you have a vision for five years from now, a lot of the decisions I'm making today, I have to kind of compare it to 5 years from now and say, okay, will this decision today have to be changed again? Mm-hmm. Or is this a decision that we believe will actually fulfill our 5-year vision? So, when you're just an agent in production, you don't have the capacity to take on some of those other opportunities.
Yeah.
I didn't have time to do mortgage and title, to do some of the heavier investing that we could have done. I was busy at mom and pop's kitchen table. I didn't have the time. Where today, part of our long-term strategy will be some of those auxiliary services being added into the company.
Yeah, God bless your competition in the market now that you're not actually going on appointments every day of the week, because you sitting down and having an actual plan with all that time is scary stuff for your competition.
We're having a lot of fun already. I've my first hire when I came back was our office manager. Everybody's like, how'd you hire all those people so fast? I'm like, I didn't hire them. I went and hired a really good, branch manager and said, hire all these people.
Yeah.
So I didn't go that route, but I do agree. I think we're probably, because of the time that you have, when you're a leader and you have the time to be thoughtful about the strategy and the mission and, how you're going to accomplish it. Yeah, you can get stuff done a lot faster, and I think that, and you guys are like this too, but, we set the vision, the mission, and the plan, and then we push. Mm-hmm. And making sure that people are fulfilling that. And when you have the time to do it, there's no telling what you can get done.
Yeah. And the neat thing, Greg always makes a reference. I remember probably within my first 6 months of working with him years ago, he gave me the example of what his role was. And it seems like, talking with you, it's very similar. He is the scout. I'm the scout for our office. He's a scout for his office. And our role is to go out and understand what's happening and make sure that the agents on the team don't have to worry about knowing what direction we're going. Just come on, because we've already gone ahead and looked and seen what's out there, what's scary, what do we got to know, and now we'll keep making the path if you guys just keep following behind us. And I think I hear a lot of that in what you're doing. So that's a pretty cool thing that you've got going on now, especially with the time you've got.
And it's ownership, right? I mean, it's taking ownership as a company of the success of the company and the agents that are in the company and the clients that are being served by the company. And, I think that in, realtor world, the brokers out there typically just expect the agents to be the ones to figure all that stuff out. And it's that lack of vision and mission and plan, and that lack of concern for what might be coming, or not, or maybe it's not even a lack of concern. Maybe it's just a lack of not knowing what to do.
Yeah.
Where for some companies like yours, it's like, no, we understand the industry. We do understand what the changes are that are coming. We know what our value proposition is, and we are going to continue to stay on the cutting edge of vision and mission and plan to make sure that our team can execute at the highest level possible. And, if you don't start with that mindset, from the beginning, it's not good. These agents should all be looking at their leadership team right away and saying, who are they? Yeah. What are they? What do they stand for? Where are they going? Because if they're depending on agents to solve their problems, that company's not going to be, that won't be as successful as if it's working together as a company, as a team.
Yeah, there's always something to chase, but you got to be the one to say, okay, this is the direction we're going, take ownership of it, and then actually execute it. So
yeah. I mean, think about the military. I mean, the infantry doesn't get dropped and then say, oh, the guys do whatever you want. There's a reason there's generals and captains and lieutenants. I mean, you've got to put them in the right direction and then move them forward, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Good deal. So, hey man, great stuff. One other thing I just had in my notes, I want to make sure everybody takes note of is, so you got to the point where you're financially free, you've got all this stuff happening, and then COVID comes up. And you told your wife, what an opportunity. How many of us miss opportunity because of lack of preparation? Who would have thought? Were you planning on doing that in April of 2020?
No, we had planned on doing it in December though.
Yeah.
So because we were already financially free, and because my kids were home because of the COVID lockdown, and California was really locked down at that time. It was like, this is an opportunity. Everybody else is looking at it's like, oh my gosh, it's terrible. And I'm going, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Let's do this right now.
Yeah.
But you're right. I mean, if we hadn't been prepared, we could have never taken advantage of that opportunity.
Yeah. And didn't miss a thing while you were gone.
No, I mean, other than, that's another challenge. That was the one thing I did miss in that whole thing was the challenging aspects of COVID. That must have been, I'm not saying it was fun, but it's different. Yeah. It was a different problem to solve.
Yeah.
And for that, those who got to solve it, good for them. I mean, must have been a lot of, I wouldn't say fun, let's just say it was an interesting experience and something we probably won't see again.
Yeah.
And, I missed out on that, but,
it's a good point. And it's, not to ever detract any of the terrible stuff that came out of it. But the reality is it was the craziest 6 to 9 months ever, because we literally went from third or fourth week of March with Zoom calls talking about, all right, review your expenses. It's not bringing a profit, cut it. All this stuff. And in the course of maybe 90 days, probably closer to 60 days, it's like, all right, something's going on here. All that stuff, throw that business plan out and now do another one. You got to go all in because the market's exploding. And then 6 months later, forget it.
Yeah, exactly. And and I got to see it from my sailboat, but it was like, I was watching that and I was as interested as anybody. The only thing I was still coaching our company. Even when I left, I still provided some training each week for our team. I didn't want to lose Josh overnight, so I was calling and checking in, and we would do a 30-minute call each week and kind of motivate him. And, so I had a pretty good feel for what was going on here, but man, it was, I think, a surprise for all of us who had been, veterans in the business. It was like, wow, this was unexpected.
Yep. No doubt. Well, for people that are out there and agents that might be going, oh my God, I didn't know Josh was back, or I actually like the West Coast, California, maybe I should move there. How would agents get a hold of you? What's the best way to touch base with you?
Easiest ways is to type Josh Barker into Google and or reddinghomes.com.
Got it. If I
That's-
type
that's-
Josh Barker and then I go to photos, is it all like Caribbean? Still got some
No, we haven't
sign.
uploaded too many of those, but
Okay, good.
but no, you'll find our company. They're really pretty easy. Our company's called Josh Barker Real Estate, so it'll be easy to
Outstanding.
find us that way.
Awesome. Well, Josh, thanks again for hopping on here, and thank you for those in the audience. Please continue to give us some feedback. If there's different topics you want us to talk about, always give us a great review, a bad review. It doesn't matter. All reviews are good. We read them all and respond. And for both Greg and I, if you have questions or you want to reach out to us, usually the best way is hit us up on Facebook, and we respond to everything as quickly as we can. And just once again, thank you, Josh. And you can come back and you've always got great stuff anytime. So enjoyed it.
Thank you very, very much for the opportunity to talk with you guys today.
You got it.